First of all, thank you very much for coming. And,
No problem.
And I would like to begin just with your decision to come to Russia. Why did you decide to go, and what did you expect?
I think the first thing to say is that I've travelled extensively around the world. I've been to 60 countries in the world, and I've lived in about 6 countries, and I've stayed quite a long time in about 4 other countries. So I think it was only a matter of time before I did come to Russia. I wouldn't say I've had any long-standing desire to come to Russia in terms of wondering what the culture is like, the country, the culture, the people. I think it was more to do with an opportunity with business. Albeit there is a certain dialogue in the West, as you're aware, in England, the United Kingdom and America, that puts this picture across about Russia being unfriendly, cold, unwelcoming. And to a certain degree, for many people that's quite attractive. We want to come and look for ourselves and make our own opinion. But generally, I haven't sort of wanted, or there's no great desire for like the last 10-20 years. It was just, I thought that coming to Russia and Moscow specifically would give me an opportunity for developing business in my line of work, and that was what was attractive. A huge population in Moscow, lots of opportunity for developing certain types of business here. So I just thought it was the right time to come and give it a chance and see what the opportunity afforded me coming to Moscow.
And what were expectations? Just were they
I think when you've lived my type of life and the experience of my journey in life, I don't really have any expectations anymore. My expectations are очень mala, very, very small, and I think that you come to a country and you have to basically work very hard to develop the opportunity and to make it work. And that was very much the case when I came to Moscow. I knew that it was going to be very much hard work. There was a lot of tenacious activity of developing business relationships and getting my particular business off the ground, and it was proven to be as well.
And do you remember what surprised you most of all when you arrived to Russia? Was there something that
I think the biggest surprise was the beauty of the city, the architecture, the friendliness, the friendliness of people, and the desire generally for people to get to know me when they found out I was English. Very interested where I was from, and they wanted to engage in conversation, etc. So that was interesting. But I think the openness and the fact that it was a truly 24-hour city, and then there's anything's available for you, the opportunity for eating at any time. So that was the biggest surprise.
As you traveled a lot, do you see any similarities maybe between the Russians and the British? Not differences, but maybe similarities.
I don't really see a lot of similarities in terms of culture or mindset. It's very, very different. So I can't really say that there is a lot of similarities. I think Russia as a country is very orientated between Europe and Asia, so they have 2 different sort of mindsets. English is very, very westernized in its logic, in its thinking, its mindset. With Russians generally, they're a bit more closed in their thinking. They're a lot less trustful. I'll give you an example. I was at a marketing networking event last night on a joint collaboration of the MBA between the Hong Kong Business School, Stalker, and there was a mixture of people within the audience. There was Americans, English and Russians, and the people who were talking, who were actually contributing, who were opening up and discussing, were all the Americans and English. The Russians were very quiet. They didn't ask any questions. They were very, very closed. So there's a marked difference in mentality. And when I'm with some Russian friends, when I'm out and about, if I'm in a lift or I'm in a restaurant, I'm always talking to people. And the people, Jason, it's not a good idea to talk all the time. You should be a bit more reserved, because that's the way Russians behave. So there's a massive difference between the similarity. That's what I find anyway.
But actually, I think even the education system is different. For example, in Britain, in Russia, and there are so many lectures in Russian system of education. So when you just need to sit and listen to somebody.
Yeah, it's very
talking.
autocratic, isn't it, the way that communication is, and obviously you've got a difference. I think up until recently we have a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science education system, 3 or 4 years at university. I think your students, they last 4 or 5 years, and they're combining it into sort of a Bachelor and a Master's degree. So the education, the higher education system is still different. I think the way that you deliver education, it's more autocratic. It's being told rather than asking for open debate. So there's probably still room and ways to go in terms of the education system, developing your people in terms of getting real leaders in innovation and getting people to think outside the box, as we say, and be more open-minded.
And do you see any difference in upbringing children in Russia and in Britain?
The upbringing of children.
And attitude towards children.
I think one thing that has surprised me about children is a lot of families in Russia, they've just had one child, rather than having, in England we have 2.3 children, in between two. Many families have 3. We have a lot of multiculturalization with immigrants, and a lot of people from the subcontinent, they have up to 10 children. So it is a surprise, and when I ask people, why is it you just had one child? It's not particularly orientated towards a family, whereas English families, they want their child to have a brother or sister. It can be quite obviously lonely for one child family, and it's amazing how many Russians just have one child, and the answer that I get given is that they want to expand all their love, all their attention, all the money that they have to give that daughter or son the best education, the best love, the best things that they can buy. And I can understand it, but I can also understand it from the British point of view, that we tend to have larger families where giving the children the beauty of having a brother and sister as well, and that's our mentality. We feel that that's important.
Also, do you see any difference in relations between women and men in Britain and in Russia, and the dating itself?
Well, yeah, there's huge differences in the culture of dating between the two countries. I mean, obviously, within the UK, we've had it's been a huge change over the last 30-40 years in terms of equal rights for ladies, and that has manifested itself in relationships. It's very much a sort of equal rights methodology and mindset when it comes to dating. The way it usually goes is that when men begin to date women, they will usually pay for the expense, the meal. They will be a gentleman in terms of taking ladies out wherever it is, whether it's cinema, whether it's the restaurants. But eventually, when the relationship becomes more embedded and becomes stronger, ladies tend to pay themselves or even pay for the events. Whereas obviously here the mindset and the culture is that the man pays for everything, and it's very, very interesting from a male point of view who comes here is not aware of that philosophy. I'll give you an example. I had a friend who had a Russian girlfriend who's with another friend, and they invited this girl's friend to come down to the restaurant, and she came down. She was drinking champagne, she was ordering the best steak, and she had a thoroughly enjoyable evening, and then sort of left. And then I think both ladies left, and then the bill was presented to the guys, and they were going, "Oh my goodness me, they're like a 20,000 ruble bill. Why is this lady left without paying?" In England, if we invite people to parties or events, they are generally understanding that they take care of their own bill, whereas we understand here the culture is if you invite people out for a coffee or dinner or whatever it is, you tend to pay for it. It's this distinct difference in the UK with that. Another example, you know, perhaps if there's a celebration, a lady might take a man out and pay for his meal or pay for the events. Whereas again, you ask a lady, you say, what do you want for Mother's Day? And you say, oh, just take me out for a meal, that's fine, I don't need a present. Oh, I've never paid for a man in my life, I'm not going to start doing it now, Jason. So there is very, very strong differences between the dating culture, and I think it becomes a bit of a shock both from an English point of view, a man or an American guy coming here, and also from a Russian lady's perspective if she's never been out with a foreigner before. And it also works the same way when Russian ladies go to Europe and they go out for dinner with a guy, and it gets to a stage where we're diaper-delling, we're going to split this bill, I'll pay for myself and you pay for yourself. It's a bit of a shock, I think, to Russian ladies, yeah?
Yeah, sometimes.
And,
I would also want to ask you about maybe some life mission or some destiny, attitude towards destiny. Do you see it in Russia, in Russia, among Russian people, and is it different in Russian and in Britain?
What, in terms of setting goals and ambition, in terms
like
of
that.
where they want to find themselves in 5, 10, 15 years? I think the Russian people generally very, very ambitious, and they're very goal orientated. I don't think there's a distinct difference between the two cultures and the British culture. The British society, we're obviously very goal orientated as well. I think there's probably a slight difference in terms of I think people within Russia probably are more loyal towards their companies. They stay in their companies a lot longer than maybe British people do. If they're not happy, if they're unhappy, if they feel they don't get the correct salary, or the salary is unjustified to the work, they will leave the job and they will look for another job. Whereas I think here in Russia, people stay with companies for life if there is an opportunity, and they're more loyal towards their company. But that can also bring periods where they're stuck at certain levels within the management structure, and I think they get very frustrated, stuck at the same level, at the same pay. But they seem to be very, very patient with what salary they get, and the fact they're stuck in a limbo, so to speak, rather than just leaving and trying to find another job. So there's distinct differences with regard to loyalty and being retained in certain companies. They sort of tend to stay in companies a lot longer. I've known people who've sort of worked 20, 30 years for the same company. It's not the same in England anymore.
And are there any features of character in the Russians that maybe irritates you, that you don't like?
Well, it's one of my pet peeves actually in terms of politeness. I do feel that Russian ladies are not as polite as English ladies, and I think maybe there's various reasons for that. In England, we are very gentlemanly. We'll open the door for a lady, and a lady will consciously say thank you very much. And I have found in Russia, whilst I've been here, I always open doors and allow women to go in front of me and act in a gentlemanly way, and it's very, very rare that I get a thank you from a Russian lady. It's almost like an expectation, and it's a distinct difference in the culture. It is quite annoying for English men when they make an effort to open doors, and usually the response if I open the door is the lady will not even look at me in the eye, they won't smile, they'll just walk in and don't say thank you. So from a British perspective, it's very, very annoying, and it upsets me. I do talk to people about it. Oh, I always say thank you, Jason. I always say thank you. Well, so it was amazing. If I count 100 ladies, maybe 95 just walk past me, they don't say thank you. But I think that's just part of the culture. I think ladies just expect, or probably don't expect anything from men in terms of politeness in Russia. But with English guys, we do tend to be still chivalrous and gentlemanly, and open the door and open the car door and bring the chair out when ladies are sitting down, and that type of character. But Russian ladies, I don't think they know the word thank you when it comes to opening the door.
And after some negative aspect, maybe to some positive aspect. Maybe.
Well, I think Russian ladies, I think your President Putin actually is on record to say that Russian ladies are probably the most beautiful race and breed of ladies in the world. I couldn't disagree with him. They're very beautiful ladies. The ladies always look after themselves. They're always very well presented. even more so than British ladies. The British ladies tend to dress down. It's a big disappointment, especially after you've come to Russia and you're seeing how well presented and how beautiful and well prepared ladies are here. And I think it's also useful to note that we know that generally the salaries for people in Moscow are not so high as well, and it's a struggle for ladies to actually pay for all the things that make them beautiful: the cosmetics, the clothes, shoes, all the elements that go towards making a lady presentable. I'm sure it's not an easy thing to expend monthly money to retain the beauty of oneself in Moscow. So I think it's something that should be complimented and put on record, that it's a huge effort for ladies to achieve a level of beauty and personal grace that they achieve every day, every week and every month. So I think Russian ladies should be complimented for that.
About your favorite places in Moscow and in Russia, if you have had a chance to travel.
Well, I've travelled to a few cities. St. Petersburg is obviously an unbelievable, beautiful city in terms of the architecture. It's got the real wow factor. I've been a couple of times there. First time I went with my mother, and it was an unbelievable experience to travel around, walk around the whole of the city. It's an amazing experience. Anybody who's not been to St. Petersburg surely must go. On the other side of the coin, I first visited Samara. That was my first city that I visited in Moscow, almost 10 years ago now. And that was the other side of the fence. I was shocked at the state of the city, the lack of care and love in the parks, the infrastructure of the road, big holes in the road. So I was driving from the airport to the city, and it was the first time I'd seen a Russian road. Huge holes in the ground, and I was absolutely in shock of the car going like this around this massive hole with sand in it. The parks were no flowers, no plants. There was no love in the parks. All the roads and the pavements were all cracked and broken. It was a big culture shock, and even the building I was staying in, I was scared to actually go into it because the bricks were uneven. It looked as though the building was about to collapse at any second, and it was a real culture shock. And I remember thinking, and I remember when I was leaving, I was almost in tears with the real culture shock that I'd experienced coming to Russia. So in many ways it was interesting and nice, if I can use that word, to actually go and see that experience, the starkness of the city compared to the beauty of Moscow, the money, the expenditure that's been pumped into Moscow, and the architectural sublime beauty of St. Petersburg. I've also been to Smolensk. I've been to the various cities around the Golden Ring, Sergei Posad, Suzdal. Very, very beautiful, very pretty cities, very, very impressive. They're very interesting for foreigners to go and visit, and it just adds to the enjoyment of living in Moscow, those places where I've been to. I've also been to Kaliningrad as well. That was very, very interesting as well, and I've been to Kazan, and Kazan's a very beautiful city. So on the whole, generally all the places I've been to, I've been very, very impressed, with the exception of Samara the first time. It was a real culture shock, but I have not been back since 2009. It'd be interesting to go back because I'm sure there's been investment in the city, especially since the World Cup, so it'd be interesting to see the transformation.
And in Moscow, do you have any favorite places in
Well, I live quite near to Philosophy Park. It's very, very beautiful, and it's very nice to actually go through the park. Obviously it's embedded with trees, and obviously Moscow River meanders through there. It's got a very nice area where you've got areas where you can bathe. There's a volleyball park there. You can play badminton, you can play football, you can cycle, you can rollerblade. Very, very pleasant for a Sunday evening. The Hermitage Park in the centre of Moscow, I've been there a few times. That's very nice and pleasant to go and walk around there, have a glass of wine in the evening. And there's the Gorky Park as well. It's very, very pretty, but as we can see, there's lots of people in the park, and it just sort of detracts from it sometimes. There's too many people in Gorky Park, but again, it's very, very pleasant to come and walk in here on a quiet day.
Not on Friday,
Yeah.
I don't know, on weekend.
I should get a job doing this, shouldn't I?
And the weather and Russian winter. How do you
Well,
see?
the weather in Moscow and Russia is very, very interesting. I use that word because you do have experienced the full 4 seasons. And if you think about, the severity of the winter, you have snow in minus, 25, 30. Very, very cold, and then you've got nice autumnal days in the autumn. We're sat outside, it's the 21st of September, we've got an Indian summer, it's beautiful blue sky today. It's still warm enough to wear a blouse or a shirt. We've had a fantastic summer this summer, it's probably been one of the best on record. Springs are lovely as well. So you get an experience of all the seasons here, whereas in England it's just a prolonged dampness, it's a prolonged greyness. The weather temperature is between 5 and 18, but generally it feels cold because it's damp. Most people in England who get to a certain age of retirement, they want to leave the country because of the weather, because it's so cold, it's miserable, it's damp. The cloud cover is about here, it's very dank and grey, it's very depressing at times. And people who get to the retirement age, they tend to retire and go to live in Portugal, in Spain, in Cyprus, in Greece. And they go there because they want to feel the heat, they want to feel the sunshine. The sunshine makes people feel happy, it gives them a good mood. And generally, this summer here, we've had a wonderful summer. Most summers you have a better summer in Moscow than you do England. So if you want to come on holiday to Moscow in the summer, come, because the weather's lovely.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking to you, Evgeny, especially the crowd and the audience that gathered to watch our interview. It's been very, very uplifting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
All the best.